Morning, everybody. John Sviepla here for GAI Insights, where you get your Gen AI news briefing, reading the top news, essential, important, or optional, filling your mind with thoughts and your day with time back. All right, we're delighted to have Lucinda Lindy today, who's the principal data scientist at Ironsides, an IT and data consulting company, and somebody who's a longtime friend of GAI Insights and ChatGPT before that, and Paul Byer before that. So there we go. Great to have you, Lucinda. Thanks for coming.
Wonderful to be here.
We have Ankash, we have Luda, we have Tim. All right, Ankash, start us off with the first article.
Thanks, John. So the first one that we have for today comes from Zifra, and it talks about their Zamba 2 7 billion model, which they are claiming is better than some of the competitors like Mistral, Google's Gemma, and Meta's Llama 3 series.
All right, one of the big predictions we had from our conference back a week ago was the idea that small models are going to be big in the coming year. Here we have ones. What do you think, Tim?
I think this is an optional read for the AI leader, mostly because it's, as you said, spot on in terms of an enormously important trend. But unless you really want to fire up your propeller and spin it really fast, this is a very detailed technical article about how they got the performance they got. But the main point that is important is that they got incredible performance on both training and inference. And we're going to have another article later on about new techniques. So the key thing here is they use both a new technique, the vernacular, if you will, already in the industry is called Mamba. So everybody knows about transformers, which were the thing that made ChatGPT possible. This is an integration of Mamba, which is a newer technique, with transformers. So it uses both transformers and Mamba, and then does a host of other things. So if you really want to understand some really interesting, geeky, techie stuff, read the whole thing, because they go through in quite some detail several of the techniques that they use to get both much lower cost training and much lower latency inference. So interesting article for the technical crew, really important marker of a trend, but really an optional read for the AI leader.
Yeah, I thought what was interesting here is very, very compatible with mobile devices, which we'll get to.
Yes, that's the big point, is the dramatically reduced cost of training. They did this on 100 GPUs, I believe was the number, which is still a lot of GPUs, but a whole lot less than, I'm sure, the tens of thousands that were used in most of the what are called SOTA, state-of-the-art models. So several orders, not one order, but probably 2 or 3 orders of magnitude less training power. And as you point out, capable of running on very small devices.
All right. What do other folks think?
Yeah, I agree it's optional, but it's fascinating that people keep pushing for the performance of these models. So, and it's almost like every day we hear news of here's another technique to squeeze some more performance out of the models. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Adoption.
Yeah. Well, I pounded the table a bit on the idea that these products came to market too early is the wrong phrase, but I don't have a better phrase. They came to market all of a sudden without any robustness in terms of the way they were actually developed. These were basically research projects that suddenly became viable in the marketplace. So people just started selling, and they sold like nobody could believe. And so it's not all that surprising that there's an enormous amount of work to just get these models to reasonable places. And I think there's lots more. This is just low-hanging fruit. We're only in the first 2 years. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's lots more low-hanging fruit out there to dramatically improve the performance of these models.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that this is an optional model. I agree, but it also does kind of another brick showing the rise of the Mamba architecture. Transformer architecture is kind of brute force. It uses up a lot of resources. And the Mamba architecture promises to use less, and you're starting to see some of the early indicators of that here with some of the efficiencies. I think that if we're not going to be, building entire power plants for training of LLMs or other generative AI models, then these types of architectures are going to be important for using things, building them with more efficiency. So I do think that this is, interesting. Very early, as you mentioned, Tim. They're throwing the products out there to be able to get the reactions so they can iterate faster. The Mamba architecture is way lower on the development curve than the transformers, which have been going up for several years now.
Yep.
Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, because Mamba scales much closer to linearly versus quadratically, which is a huge difference, right? People throw around the word exponential a lot, and they mean large, but this is actually exponentially different. So it's, as I believe it was Einstein said, the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. So whatever. All right, we're going optional here, but with a lot of insightful commentary. Ankash, next, please.
The next one comes from Amazon, and it talks about how Amazon dreams of AI agents that will do our shopping for us.
All right, Ms. Lindy, what did you think of this?
Yeah, well, I think it's important, and actually, I'd like to put in a bid for Essential because you can actually use this right now. So basically, the idea behind this is Amazon is employing custom-built LLMs that use their own proprietary shopping data, and it's basically to help people navigate just the hundreds of thousands or millions of products that are on Amazon. So and also a wonderful thing about it is that you can try it out right now. So if you go to the Amazon website, up in the upper right half corner is a little oval that says Rufus. So I tried it out. I'd been actually looking for a soft-sided cooler and spent probably close to an hour looking at different things, what pluses and minuses. And it was able to, I said, tell me what you recommend and why based on reviewers. It basically distilled down all the comments of the reviewers. Here are the important things that reviewers thought were attributes of this. It's like, oh, wow, okay, I would have had to read a bunch of reviews to do that. And so I think it's really good. They talk about the AI agents here in the title of the article. That's still a long ways off. I think Rufus, as it's currently being used, is really a great example of how to incorporate an LLM seamlessly into a workflow that saves you a lot of work. The agents part, where they're talking about, there was one example they gave, like, oh, here, I'm going on a camping trip, buy me everything I need. Well, even the AWS researcher said that he wouldn't give his credit card yet to an agent. So, but I think that if people want to watch real time how a capability like this evolves with on a job that you do, many days, looking at Rufus and watching it is good. So I'll put a bid out there for Essential.
I actually can support Essential because it's an example that people can use. Granted, it's Amazon, and so the volumes are high, but any actually selling agent on a B2C website can benefit from the lessons here, because it's a lot of times you go with no knowledge of a particular product that you want to get. Like, I'm currently looking for a particular weight for training, and I don't know anything about it, and so I need to research it a lot. So this can be a great example for people to use.
Yeah, Rob raised an interesting question about, will this results in any trust issues for Amazon? It'll be fascinating. And then, Ashish, I had the same experience you had, Lucinda, which was, I had a very good experience with Rufus, but Ashish found it less than impressive. And this notion of pitching his agents. Tim, what do you think?
I rated it Essential for the opposite reason almost. the Thomas Jefferson, the educated populace is the only defense. So yeah, I've had both. I've had mixed reactions to Rufus, but the main thing is, talk about the fox in the hen house. Okay. This is an Amazon agent on the Amazon website helping you shop.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we think there might be a little bias here of any kind, even subtle bias? So for instance, if you use the Firefox web browser, all these kind of things are happening now. Assistants of one type or another, pretty limited right now, but they're assistants. Firefox has a little add-in that will rate the reviews on an Amazon product. So you just go to Amazon and it will tell you these reviews are B+ reliable or C- reliable, because there's a lot of crap in those reviews as well. So anyway, the point made here is that, caveat emptor. So yeah, this is an interesting idea this is great for Amazon. Let's buy more stuff without even thinking about it. Let's buy even more stuff without even being involved in the process. It's just going to buy it for us. It's great for Amazon. I'm not so sure it's great for us. And I would sure like to see more independent. I think there's a, we've talked about the SEO bloodbath. I think there is an entire e-commerce bloodbath.
Yeah.
Things go well, in my opinion, which is the creation of more honest broker assistance to help us sort through the myriad of offerings from the giants who have so much control over the marketplace. So for us, I view this as essential in the fight back mentality that, we have to be educated about this stuff if we want to create something better than the foxes in the hen house.
Yeah, so I totally agree, Tim, and this is a very good point. So in my weight story, I actually went to Perplexity to put all that I was hearing from Amazon or the products on Amazon in perspective, because there are clinically proven stuff, and Perplexity pulled them out that were not on Amazon because they were too expensive. So people need to be aware for sure that this is stuff in process, essentially.
Yeah, but I think it's going to happen a lot. That's the other. I agree with what Lucinda, you and the others said, in terms of you really need to be aware of this, because if you're in e-commerce, almost everybody deals with Amazon. It's important to know about.
Yep. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I got the same sort of creepy feelings as what you were talking about. Like, oh my gosh, now I have even less agency in kind of choosing what I buy. But consumers may be seduced by the convenience, as we often all are.
Yeah, the natural tendency of any monopolist is toward control over the customer. I mean, it goes all the way back to the Boston Tea Party, right? Which was in response to the assertion by the Crown of the East India Tea Company's monopoly.
Exactly.
Anyway, so appropriate.
I will say it's a pretty mediocre chatbot so far.
Yeah.
At least in my anecdotal experience, and Ashish has given us some good examples, and sometimes it's good, other times it's wildly bad. I mean, just completely off topic. So,
but it will improve, right? What we're pointing out are really different from Rufus itself, I think.
Yeah. Vivek notes, when will folks, allow things to, really take over that agency? It'd be interesting to see. I mean, I think convenience is huge.
Yep.
And,
people give up a lot for convenience.
And
that's what I think Amazon and others count on, is that we'll just make it easier for you to do what you already do. In fact, if Amazon has been successful, that is, to me, one of the prime reasons, just from a marketing and experience point of view. They just make it easy to do everything that gets you to put something in that cart.
Yeah, and I think they also often think of what value add they can have on the information exhaust from their existing business. So, when I'm at Whole Foods now, I check out with my palm. Well, now they have a great biomarker. They've got a couple biomarkers on me tied to a credit card, the whole routine. Yeah, I think that I'm going to rate this essential. I agree. And I think the other lesson is a lot of companies ought to be thinking about what is the flow of information I have now that I then can create convenience on top of. whether that's my doctor or my, healthcare provider, my automobile company. I mean, there's so many flows of information that few organizations are really thinking, how can I add intelligence to it to create value? All right, essential. Next.
Next one that we have comes from Scale AI, and it talks about refusal trained LLMs, which are easily jailbroken as browser agents.
Yeah, this one was assigned to me. I was going to give this an important rating. I think if you scroll down, Ankash, there's the purple and the blue histograms farther down. That one there. Yeah, so here's kind of interesting. They have 100. They have 100 hacks and attacks in this database, and what the kind of these colors. My God, what I guess the lighter purple or the darker blue, whatever you want to call it. That's with the browser behavior, and then the chat behavior, and so it's showing that the new agents that are starting to be put into browsers are much easier to hack than the actual LLMs themselves. So as we get into agentic systems, the controls and the learning and the teaching that have been going on for a couple of years to try to keep these systems from advising people on dangerous things, are really not, that logic and set of controls is not coming over to the agents interacting with them. So I was going to rate this important. I think as people get so hot on agents, I'm kind of where Paul Baier is, that I think agents are overhyped in terms of what's actually going to be applied in 2025. But now so many people work in them. So I was going to give this important. What do you folks think?
Yeah, I agree. Ashish commented on the previous article that how many people will give agents a credit card, right? And that's the skepticism. I think they're not ready, and the agents are not ready. But this is a great article to say, hey, listen, but they need to be controlled before they get ready. So I think it is an important message.
I think it's important for another reason too, because it points out one of the big challenges of working with agents. Like, if you think it's hard to wrangle one LLM, if you're wrangling multiple LLMs that are cycling different responses in terms of for the AI leader, what's the telemetry that you need in order to be able to troubleshoot? If you've got, if you tell an LLM to do 3 LLMs to do 10 cycles of, doing research and then a complex task where they're iterating. I think that, figuring out how to limit hallucinations with one LLM is tough, as Alden would tell you. Doing it with multiple really, I think, makes it an exponential challenge. So I agree that agents are going to be, gradually introduced, that really they're going to start out as like little automations. And then, as people figure out how to overcome these challenges, then they can take on more agency.
All right, no pun intended. Those agents can take on more agency. All right, so we're going to give this one an important, good idea to start.
Maybe the other thing to think about here, the reason I would go with important too, it's not clear the current game is a winning game. So what we're doing right now is playing whack-a-mole, which is the general security game that's been played forever. And, it's worked okay in security. I would say okay, not fantastic, but okay.
Right.
But the capabilities inside these LLMs are very different from the capabilities we're defending against today with security. So the question is, can you really keep the genie in the bottle? If this thing can tell you how to make a nuclear weapon or tell you how to make bioterrorism, can you really keep it in there? And is this just a fool's errand trying to defend these LLMs this way? We need to rethink how we're going to defend ourselves against malefactors getting this information, because it looks like they're going to get it one way or another.
Yeah, I think what's interesting here, and Tim, you and I, well, I want to speak for you. At least I was deeply influenced by Alan Kay and his thinking, in terms of, the folks that did the internet work, were so much more around mathematics and biology, and think of these as organic systems and living systems, and thinking about control regimes that much more, that are more like biomimicry than they are like bureaucracy. And I think we still have, I believe that, Alan tells the story of how the engineers after World War II, the folks in OR and operations research and management science had nothing to do. So they came over and tried to, took over the computer science curriculum. And now we have this curriculum, which is basically, top down, as at its core, a soul of, top down engineering and control. And the mathematicians and the biologists were pushed to the side. And, that's how you end up with, a Windows machine having, 3 orders of magnitude more code in it than the code that runs the internet. And so, he cites a 1970s curriculum meeting where the biologists and mathematicians lost out to the engineers. And so that's where you end up with COBOL and all kinds of crazy stuff. Anyway, I think that's coming back to haunt us here, that we're going to have to think of more organic systems in terms of dealing with distributed intelligence and control. And because bureaucracy cannot contain life, if you, and I believe anyway.
I agree.
And Ron says it may be more context with SLMs powering the decision making. Sure, absolutely. And then thinking about
That's good, yeah.
where does there'll be competing intelligences, just as there are, depending upon how you think about your body, right? When new bad agents come in, and then very interesting propagation mechanisms for things like virus protection and so forth, right? What those what a vaccine look like.
Get involved, so it becomes a much more complex ethical, and it's just complicated, and it's not clear the path we're on is a great one in my opinion.
I think our control thinking comes from the industrial age, and that is long gone.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll see.
All right. Important it is. Next.
The next one is about a new training methodology. So they have trained this model Intellect 1, which has been trained decentralized, and it's a 10 billion parameter model.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, in terms of, this reminded me of SETI at home, right? You got this whole. I thought this is and it also lays out different, in a very technical way, different ways that it solves some of the issues of having asynchronous, decentralized capabilities. So what do you think here, Tim?
Well,
I mean, Lou.
Go ahead.
I think it was mine, but Tim, please chime in. So I rate it as important. I think it's the first model that allows a training in decentralized way. Moreover, this is the model that you can contribute your own compute and thus be participant in a bigger model training. So the company actually published a framework that is an open framework on DeepMind's what they call distributed low communication method, DLOCO or DILOCO, I'm not sure. And now they used it to scale the 1 billion parameter size model, and now they're training, or have trained, the 10 billion parameter model. So this is tremendous, and it's in hugging face, and it can be scaled even bigger, obviously. So it is a fascinating development, and for that reason, I think it's important in my mind for people to be aware.
Just all the cell phones out there. Tim?
Yeah, I think the idea is essential. This is a hard article for an AI leader who's not super techie to read.
Yeah.
Again, this is one instance, and it's great, as was the other article, the first article, if you really want to spin the propeller fast, because they're actually nice about going into the details of how they got a lot of this to work. Are any of those details relevant to most AI leaders? No. But the idea of decentralized training, you mentioned SETI, there was the protein folding one as well. This is another Alan Kay-ism, right? The the biggest supercomputer in the world is most of the idle cycles running on people's local devices.
Yeah.
And the ability to harness that power is hugely important, in my opinion. And this is the first I've seen of it in print. Our friend David Smith, I don't know if you know David Smith.
Yeah, sure.
But he's got a whole operating system developed like this that can do real-time gaming on the internet and all sorts of stuff. So this stuff is a more biological model of computing, and in fact takes much advantage of all the dead cycles that are on most people's devices. So all of a sudden you might not need a whole bunch of H100s or Blackwells. You might be able to just sign a bunch of people up and say, we'll give you credits on the model, because I think that's what they're doing here. You work some sort of barter agency with people donating you time. And in fact, I suspect if you did a protein folding kind of thing, you might get it for free. You know, people donate their time to a good cause kind of thing. So I think the idea is essential. I think this is a big, potentially watershed moment if this pans out, but decentralized computing has not panned out a couple of times before, so we'll see. But I think it's an important idea. I wouldn't argue with important as a rating. I would just say, you know, I put that like super techie warning on the, you know, skip over the technical stuff if you're not that technical.
Well, but Ankash, if you can scroll down to the section that has key features, the amount of innovation that is in this model is certainly worth scanning, or at least trying to understand what they're trying to do. So Ankash, if you can scroll down to key features, it's not happening. It's okay. So in the key features, they describe pieces of innovation that went into making this model a success, right? And so this is, I think, worth like elastic device mesh so that it's fault tolerant, then asynchronous distributing checkpointing. So one of the innovation, they don't checkpoint too often, every 100 cycles. So they need to make sure that the clusters actually sync in terms of what they have trained, right? The live checkpoint recovery, and on it goes. I just think the amount of innovation is noteworthy for sure.
Yeah, and it's not easy. That's why they had to do they did a whole bunch of different things, and it's not easy, and that's why they had to invent all this stuff. Again, I would point my finger to David Smith and his croquet company, because that's been developed over many, many years, and I think does almost all of this stuff already.
So I agree with important and with a tech note, but yeah, also I could be talked into the essential, because it is really interesting. I mean, only a couple of days after the conference for the GAI Insights conference was the decentralized computing conference. That was run by Ramesh Raskar, who's a friend of this community. And that's all about decentralized computing, where they're talking about, if you've got all these different systems that need to talk with each other, but not exchange personal health information, then I think that's a really important way. It gives the robustness and resilience, as you talked about with biological systems. And I do think that this is actually a very important part of the rise of decentralized systems, and also trying to avoid that too big to fail problem that we've seen with banks and IV plants, right? If you have one computing system and it gets debilitated, but you don't have the distributed, resilience and support, that's a big national problem.
Indeed.
Yeah, no, interesting. Well, Tim, I would say if your AI leader, gets intimidated by this article, I think you need a new AI leader. So,
perhaps.
Vivek notes, hey, look, could Apple, do this because they're, quasi-controlled environment. And then, Mark Zhang also notes that, hey, look, won't we see institutions like app stores, get created for these agents? I expect we will certainly, some of the vendors, OpenAI for sure, has floated that, as has I think Anthropic has as well, about could we create the agent store?
Yes.
So I think we're heading there. All right.
But I have to say, I'm reminded of was it Jurassic Park, where they said, when the Pirates of the Caribbean's break, the ride doesn't eat the participants.
Yes, right.
So the issue of letting industry control the app store is one thing when we're talking about calculators and various kinds of apps on phones. It's another thing when we're talking about things that have life and death consequences.
Yeah, I think, yes. Both sides, right, also can do great things for you. All right. I think I'm going to land on important on this one. Akash, last one. We're running a little over on time.
We have two, John. We have two.
Yes, John.
Oh, two more. Okay, right. All right. Silicon Valley. That perfect follow-up. Now we have Silicon Valley.
Here we go.
Go ahead, Akash.
Yeah. So this one talks about how Silicon Valley is debating whether AI weapons should be allowed to decide to kill.
Yes, local autonomy for lethal action. Let's see. Who do we have on this one? We had Tim. What do you think?
Well, I think this is an essential article as a citizen, but I would call it optional for the AI leader, because it's one of those where you don't have much agency.
Yeah.
So we could argue about that, but the effect on my decisions as an AI leader, since I am one, are zero. There's nothing I can do about this stuff. As a citizen, I can potentially at least be aware of it, and in the Thomas Jefferson sense, maybe do something about it. And I do think it's a crucial issue, and I don't like this moral equivalency of, well, a landmine, doesn't know whether it's a school bus or a bad guy. That's true. But that's, as my mother and many mothers said, if somebody jumps off the Empire State Building, does that mean it's a good idea? And you should follow them. So I don't think this is a good idea. I think that, again, what's needed is a more robust theory of ethics and work at this as to how we manage it. It is a problem if the bad guys start creating autonomous killing machines, which they will. That's undoubted. Then what do you do? That's the real question. Do you make yours equally deadly autonomously, or do you think about it harder and try some other approach?
Well, I think the other thing, we're talking about bad guys. That's not my biggest worry. My biggest worry is that within the next presidential reign, the next 4 years, small autonomous things, and people who are ready to do things like deploy the military domestically and use the Insurrection Act to control political speech, which one of the candidates has explicitly said that candidate's going to have robots within their 4 years that will be able to enforce that. So I think that's going to get very interesting.
Yep.
So in that, what do we think here? So we're going optional?
I say optional for the AI leader, essential for the citizen. I don't know how to say it any other way.
Do we want to invoke the AI leader's role as citizen in addition to them being an AI leader?
Yeah, because they are the ones actually, thinking about how to use these things.
Okay, I can buy that.
All right. We're going to give this one essential then. Life and death in the battlefield, and maybe domestically, we shall see. All right. Ankaj, last up.
Okay, the last one comes from DeepMind, and they have launched a new Michelangelo benchmark, which reveals the limitation of long context LLMs.
All right. Lucinda, what do you think here?
So I would rate this as important because it really talks about, it's kind of really, so benchmarks are important in the sense that they are, trying to define or be a proxy for important needs of, LLMs in the applications that are being used. So what this does is it takes long context. So if you just put a lot of context, which can go up to 1 million tokens, or a lot of them are 250,000 tokens of content into your prompt, there's a problem there. It's called the lost in the middle problem, or the needle in the haystack problem. And that if you have a lot of text, you can lose things. But even beyond that, what this benchmark is doing, it's going beyond the needle in the haystack, like find this weird little factoid in the midst of a large document. It's also looking at really the logic of the document and asking for logic and reasoning to be able to extract really synthesized insights. So I think that this is important to know, that this benchmark that exists, and that it's a thing to look at when you're evaluating new models. It also asks for questions. It asks for questions that require reasoning and understanding of the whole text. It's also trained on both text and code, which have inherent structure and a logic to them. It includes questions where they give a question and then they give 4 answers that are not the correct answer, seeing if the model will say, I don't know, because that information is actually not in that particular context. So they've tested the GPT-4s, some Claudes, and also the Gemini models. So they have a bunch of charts there with the benchmarks for how well did they do. And if you want to scroll down, Ankash, to that graph, that would be great. And so you can see that they found that the Gemini models performed well on one of the tests. The GPT models excelled at the latent list, and that the Claude models were best on the I don't know questions. So I do think so. So I think this is an important article, and really kind of points the way towards benchmarks that are evolving as the use cases are evolving. And also, this could be important for deciding between what kind of things you have for the AI leader, what kind of things you have in long context versus what kind of things you do a RAG for with a separate database that then you can retrieve from.
All right, so we're headed for important on this one?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to vote for important, and we're running over here. Sorry, I've been a little lax in my management of time here, so we're at 7:07. Anything else important to put on here?
Yeah, it is important. I agree, important.
All right, important it is. All right, Ankash, please give us the tote board here. We've got 2 essentials, AI agents, and live or die. We have jailbreak. We got a big day here. Important on Michelangelo, refusal training, intellect 1. Only the Zamba 2 7B as optional. All right, lots of reading to do. Any announcements or anything? Ludo, Lucinda, Tim, Ankash? All right, goodbye, everybody, and we'll keep it on time tomorrow. See you then. Don't forget to subscribe and like, especially on the YouTube channel. Bye-bye now.
Linda, thanks for